let's talk about this. All right. So there's a lot of training. And EXP has more than 80 live classes every week, right? I didn't misstate that. More than 80 live classes every week on lots of different things, commercial real estate and working with investors, luxury. There's so much training that, and of course, that doesn't include training on how to use necessarily the software, the website, the customer relationship management system. It doesn't include training on the multiple listing service. It doesn't include a lot of things. And so I made another training, which I know sounds ironic, called What Do You Really Need to Know? And if you're getting overwhelmed because there's so much to know, you want to focus on how to have conversations with people about buying, selling, or investing. Who do you talk to and what do you say? You need to learn how to do a consultation. You need to learn how to make a presentation. And related to learning all that, there's a minimum software you need to learn how to use. You need to learn how to use your MLS. You need to learn how to do a search. You need to learn how to use the MLS. Now, every MLS has classes on how to use the MLS. Some of them make them mandatory because they don't want you calling up asking stupid questions all the time. Like, how do I do this? And they're like, take a class, right? All the MLSs record classes, which you could watch from their website. If you're at some little MLS that doesn't do that, the software most likely that your MLS uses is being used by other MLS. I'm in MLS Listings, which uses Matrix. So does CRMLS, which is a big MLS. If you're in Bridge MLS, they use a program called Paragon, which looks like it was designed in the 1990s. It probably was. But even if you can't find, they have Bay East and those associations have classes. But if you simply Google searched, how do I create auto alerts Paragon MLS, you're going to find this is a very common program and there's hundreds of videos on how to do it. If you're in San Francisco or MetroList, you use software called Rapatoni. Again, you could search and find answers to how to, you need to learn how to use the MLS. You need to learn how to use zip forms so that if somebody says, I'd like to buy that house, you actually could write up an offer and get it signed. And number three, you need to learn how to use RPR. And if you don't know how to use, like we have KV Core, and you don't know how to create a landing page or a squeeze page or how to create a campaign, you can survive easily in real estate. But it's much more difficult if you don't have a knowledge of RPR, or it'll be much harder. All right. So if you want to ask a question, raise your hand. Otherwise, I just tend to keep talking. Just saying. And let's start by not looking at that. How about this? All right. So how do you access RPR? Well, you could go to your MLS, right? Which this doesn't really matter which MLS you're a member of. If you go to the MLS and you log into the MLS, come on, I should have logged in first, but I restarted so Zoom would be happier with me. And you notice on the right-hand side, there's a button that says Realtors Property Resource. Or you could simply, that's not the right one, you could simply go to narrpr.com, which I've got bookmarked in my list of all the major websites that I go to. Like, so if I go to my bookmarks and this is the real estate section, I have RPR bookmarked. The system I'm using is called Speed Dial 2. I just click on it and there it is. There is RPR. Now, RPR has a mobile app. You should go to wherever your mobile apps are gotten, right? Depending on the kind of phone you have, and download RPR's mobile app. Right, and I'll explain a little bit more why, but I'll say it now. If I'm showing property, what I would do in advance is I would go to RPR and I would put in the addresses of all the properties that I'm going to be showing. and I would look at them. I would run a market report as to what would be the estimated value of that property. I would want to know what the comps are. You understand, if all you do is show property because it's an active listing, what are you going to do when the owner says, well, what do you think of the price on this one? Huh? What do you think? Think this is a good price? Think it's a little high? Think it's a little low? And you're like, I don't know. You know, I just ran the active listing so I could show them to you. Oh, well, what are the other ones selling for in the neighborhood? You got any idea? No, I don't really know that either. Well, you understand that's not good. Because particularly if you're not a real experienced agent with a lot of volume, and you're trying to compete with other experienced agents, your knowledge of the market, your knowledge of property values and what's happening in the market is the thing that can set you apart and allow you to get business. If the buyers get the idea that you have no clue as to what's going on in the market, they're going to be less enthusiastic about signing an agreement to work with you exclusively. They're not going to be saying, oh, we found our agent. So I'm going to run a market analysis on all the properties before I show it. And I'm going to save those properties, because when I open up my mobile app, right? When I open up the mobile app, and I'm not logging in, but if you want to see what does a mobile app look like, there are lots of pictures on the internet, right? As to what the mobile app looks like. I'm going to have it already on my mobile app saved. And at the bottom of the mobile app, I can tap on something and it'll show me all of the listings I've saved. So if I've got 4 listings I'm going to show, I've got them all run in advance with RPR, and I save them so that when I'm being asked questions, even a question like, well, look at that one across the street. It just says sold. What did it sell for? It's a GPS-based app. It's going to give me everything that's happening in the area. Right. So you're going to not only want to learn how to use RPR, you're going to want the mobile app. By the way, log in before you go out and show property, because sometimes you get logged out and it wants your username and your password, and it would be a lot smoother if you were already logged in. So if you're not familiar with RPR, the first thing you're going to want to do is click on your picture. And if you don't have a picture, you're going to want to upload a picture. And you're going to click on profile. And there's your photo. If you want to change your photo, which for some reason I feel like doing, but you know, if you want to change your photo, you simply click on the photo. Where's one of mine? How about this one? Right. And isn't that guy? Doesn't that look great? All right, so I've changed my photo. You shouldn't be changing your logo, because usually that's provided by the broker. Right? You're not supposed to mess with it. Now you could have, you know, your own, the California Association of Realtors code, the regulations and the Business and Professions Code say that if you're a salesperson, you can't just have your logo, but not the logo of your broker. And that the broker's logo has to be of equal or greater size. So I don't worry about that, but I'm just saying. It's got the corporate address, which you don't have to display. And if you scroll down, it has your login. So it should have your MLS, and it should have your login. And Crexy, I may not get into that very much today, but Crexy is a website for commercial properties. And RPR has a commercial area, and you can find comps and you can find commercial properties. It's using Crexy as the database. Your license number, any designations. I've got some. I guess I only added one because, you know, I don't really think people care. But, you know, I have a GRI, which means a graduate of the Realtors Institute. The old joke was, you know, so-and-so has a GRI, but makes no MONEY. But anyhow, and you have to say, yeah, and you could receive updates and news. I probably should do that, and you save it. Why not? Right. And then up here, you can, your account information. Yeah, I know. I'm not going to change my password. You can see I've got a couple of mobile apps and things that I've logged into because I want RPR to be able to work on other apps. So you want to make sure that your profile is filled out. Now, there's some other sliders you can move around. I don't really modify this. I just leave it the way it is. You can list markets that you care about, but I don't really know why it's important to do that because I don't know. There's a place where I could select it. Let's say you've already done this. Now, what would we be using this for? Let's start with a buyer. Why not? You want to start with a buyer. I'll use one I've already done. Let me see which ones have I done recently. So my work up here in the top right has my markets, which shows the different areas that I've saved. I don't really know why I care about that, but it would be there. My listings, my saved properties, my recent properties, my reports, notes, saved searches, etc. Let's look at some recent properties. So where's one that how about this one? Well, we were thinking of writing an offer, but we did not. It's now a pending sale, right? Which, yeah. Look at the RVM, 3,538,000. We weren't going to go over 2.5, but whatever. So I'm going to take, unless somebody has a property that you would like me to highlight, if you do, if you've got one, you say, "Ooh, do this one," let me know. Don't everybody paste one in at once. Okay. So I'm going to just, even though this is a pending one, I'm going to go through the motions, right? I don't see anybody pasting in anything, so I'm fine. I did a CMA on it and I came up with about 2.6. Let me just go through the steps. All right, so we're looking at a property. If it's an active pending, it's going to say the list price. If it's closed, the last time it closed, if it wasn't active or pending, it would say what the price was when it closed. The RVM is the Realtors Valuation Model. And AVM is an automated valuation model. Zillow, Redfin, Homes.com, Realtor.com, right? You put a property in those programs and it'll say, this is what we think it is worth. Now, is somebody giving me, no, it's just Otter talking to me. The automated valuation models are all limited in that, number one, they assume that the property is in average condition, which it may or may not be. Oh, here, somebody's given me a live one. Thank you, Louis. I always like to use a live one. All right. So let me use this one because it's not a pending. I don't know anything about it. So there we go. All right. So first of all, I can tell it's not an active or pending or recently sold because this is a Google Street View picture. And by the way, on the report, it's going to show this picture. Now, if I were going to do a CMA on the property, one thing I would definitely recommend is go drive around and look at the property. Take a picture. You can upload your own picture, right? Because this is a really nice picture of a couple of trees. But you know, you also would like to drive around the neighborhood so you could see where do the styles and neighborhoods change. So they don't have a closed price. The RVM is 1655360. Notice it's got 4 stars. The RVM, the Realtors Valuation Model, the way it assigns stars is based upon how consistent the RVM is with Zillow and Redfin and Homes.com, etc. Is it consistent with the other valuation models? If all of the valuation models sort of say the same thing, then you get 5 stars. If the fewer stars there are means the fewer comps there are. Now, as I was saying, the valuation models, the automatic ones, number one, assume that your subject property is in average condition. That's what it's assuming, which may or may not be true. By the way, if I were, I'm going to talk about this, since this one isn't active, I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of a seller. One of the things you definitely want to do when you're talking to somebody about going on a listing appointment is ask them to describe their property. And ask them to mention any upgrades, remodels, or other work they've had done. And the reason for this is that this has happened way too many times where the county records say this is a 3.2, 1592 square feet. And when you show up, it's a 4.3 and it's 2,200 square feet. How is that possible? Well, usually it means they had some work done without the benefits of permits, without the benefit of permits. And so if you're doing a CMA, a comparative market analysis, on a 3.2, 1592, but now you're looking at a 4.3, 2,200 square feet, you don't have a very accurate market analysis. You also can refine the value. You can refine the value based upon improvements that have been done, which we'll get to maybe in a moment. It's got, look at the range, 1.4 to 1.87, that's a big range. So remember, the automated valuation models, no one's looked at the house, right? No one knows. So you can either, I want to see though, I'm curious. So I can either click on the number or click on view details. It doesn't matter. I end up in the same place. And what it's going to do is show me the comps that RPR used to come up with that valuation. Now, what I typically do with this is I peek at this just to remind myself, built in 1914. Yeah, that was the year I was born, by the way. Built in 1914. Recently closed versus off market. The difference is recently closed means it went through the MLS, which means we know stuff about it, right? There was a description and there were pictures. Off market means it was a public record transfer, but it did not go through the MLS. We don't have a description and we don't have pictures. Notice most of the ones they used came from not the MLS. Now, going back to 1914 is this doesn't work as well, but what I normally would be doing at this point is scrolling down, looking for a 3.2, also built in 1914, or whatever the correct year is. None of them were the same year because they weren't, this is probably not a subdivision lot, but I'd be looking for an exact match. If I found another 3.2, 1592 square foot built the same year, I'm going to pay attention to that one, right? And if it was one of the ones down here that was off market, I might copy that address to use it later. Just saying. But I normally, particularly in something like this one, thanks, Louis, where it's so old, we don't have, it's not a cookie cutter. It's not a cookie cutter. I know when I do this, and I ask for properties, I always get hard ones, right? I don't get the one where there's been 5 sales of the same model, you know, because that would be too easy. So I'm going to peek at that just to see what's going on. The zoning SPR 21, wow, I'd have to look that up. That might be useful, but I don't really know. The close price, there's no close price available. So that means it hasn't closed in a long time. We can actually see. This is a CMA value. This is refined value. And the seller's net sheet, I never use the seller's net sheet through RPR. I always use Chicago Title's app, the Chicago Title 1, which estimates a seller's net sheet. It looks better, works better, calculates things automatically. This one does not. I'll go back to the CMA and refined value in a minute. So here's some facts about the property. Notice there's a place for me to write in changes. Why would I be able to do that? Well, let's say it's really now a 4-3 and it's really 2,200 square feet. I can write that in. Now, I get asked this question a lot, so don't be embarrassed if you're thinking the same question. I get asked this question a lot. If I make changes here, does it change the public record? And the answer is no, of course not. Yes, we can search by year built. Yeah, what's accurate RVM? None of the automated valuation models are particularly precise because they assume average and they're just looking at what's happened in the neighborhood. Right. So we'll get into how to do a real CMA. But sometimes they're right on, and you'll notice sometimes the RVM will say 1 million, and then another house will be listed for 1.2, and all of a sudden the RVM changes. So to get back to, I'm getting a lot of questions. All right. So to get back to the question, well, if I make changes here, like I put in, it's a 4-3, and I save it, is that going to change the county records? I get asked that question. And the answer is, of course not. Do you think they're going to allow real estate agents to change tax records? I mean, what could go wrong with that? Right? So no, all this is for your information and for making a CMA. So for example, if it's not really a 3-2, but it's a 4-3, and I put that in there, it'll now run a CMA for a 4-3. Aisha, did you ever, I saw your hand up.
Yes, thank you. This is going back a few steps. I have a potential client. When I looked up the property, there was a thing on there saying, I believe it was Trella, stating what the house was worth, and then below it, a couple of lines down, it states, and with these improvements, and they had a number, say $6,000 worth of improvements, it would be worth whatever. Do we add those possible improvements onto that price, or no? Is that subjective?
It depends. Was that an RPR thing you were looking at?
No, it was something, it was Truella or Zillow or Redfin.
Yeah. I'm going to get to adding improvements in a minute.
Okay, thank you.
And you see, the question is, what are the comps? Are they improved? Right? Because comps are all remodeled kitchens and bathrooms and floors, then we're not adding something, because ours is remodeled kitchens and bathrooms and floors because it matches the comps. And we can modify and refine the comps. Right? So we can refine the subject property by adding improvements. I'm going to show you how. And you can modify the comps, because if the comps aren't up to the same level, you can change that. All right. So just to be clear, what you write in here does not change the tax records. But when you run a CMA, it'll now be calculating the value based upon what you put in. Let me just say this, because I get asked this a lot. If you were listing a house and it said 3-2, 1,592 square feet, but when you go there, it's a 4-3, 2,200 square foot, what would you put in the MLS? Would you put in, because remember, the reason it probably has more bedrooms and bathrooms than the county records say is because those were done without permits. 99.9% the reason why it doesn't show up. It could be an error in their system, but usually it's unpermitted additions. Would you put into the MLS, if you listed this house, 3-2, 1,592, which is what the tax records say, or would you put in 4-3, 2,200, which is what you actually are looking at? And I see some people are voting. 1,592. So, Louis, this is what I say when agents call me. Right? Sometimes they call me from the house. And they're like, I don't know what to do. It says 3-2, 1,592, but it's obviously, what should I put in? And I'd say, well, when you walk through the house, how many bedrooms did you count? How many bedrooms? Well, there's 4. Put down 4. How many bathrooms did you count? Well, there are 3. So put down 3. The MLS isn't asking you to input what the tax records say. They're asking you to input what is actually there. Now, is it possible that we might make a comment in the private remarks that say some of the improvements may be done without permits? By the way, that disclaimer appears like 5 times in all the different papers. Right, but you understand a 4.3 with unpermitted is still worth more than a 3.2.
But putting in a 4.3, excuse me, but putting in a 4.3, I understand your logic there, but I can't judge to say it's 2,200, even though the owner
Yes,
told me.
but they're going to ask you, where did you get 2,200 from? And you're going to say the seller told me.
Okay,
That's what you're going to pick. And in the statewide buyer and seller advisory, which I know is a form all of you have studied, there's a big paragraph about we don't know what the square footage is. You ought to figure it out yourself. And the appraiser is going to measure the property. Oh, speaking of an appraiser, what's going to happen when the appraiser appraises the property? Is the appraiser going to appraise it as a 3.2 1592 or a 4.3 2200? I get asked this.
Whatever is on the tax record.
My answer is, when the appraiser walks through the property, how many bedrooms is the appraiser going to see?
4,
4. How many bathrooms?
3.
3. When the appraiser measures the property, what roughly is the square footage going to be? 2,200. Is the appraiser, however, going to maybe note that one of the bedrooms and one of the bathrooms and some of the additional square foot was done probably without permits? Yeah. But you understand the appraiser is going to appraise what the appraiser sees also. Right? I'm just telling you that's the truth. Right? And Jody's on the line if she's not sleeping and would have yelled out by now, no, they appraise what it is.
Oh, wait.
It's what they see. But it's, yeah, anyhow, that was my little, rant for today. All right. So we can do that. It's got some information about the property, the legal description, schools. You can run a school report. It gives you school rankings. Was there a question? Oh,
Correct.
I heard noises. All right. Maybe they're in my head. Uh-oh, somebody.
Sorry.
I'm going to mute everyone. All right. There we go. All right. So
Please close your mics.
I just muted everyone except for me. Unmute yourself if you wish to speak. All right. So there's school reports, which is something we might want to show buyers, right? By the way, this could be used, this software is not just for how to come up with the value of a property. This is also something that you would put together as a presentation for a buyer. There's deed information, there's mortgage information, there's tax information. It gives you information about sales and financing. It shows the loans, estimated value, blah, blah, blah. All right. So let's say we were, all right, so that's we've made it to the first tab. Let's run a CMA. So we click on create CMA. We also could have at the top, you'll see there's a button that says CMA. We could have clicked on that. We're going to confirm the facts. So this is saying, is this really a 3.2 1590? We're given another chance to make changes if they're appropriate. Right? Put down what you see. And if the seller says, I added X amount of square footage, it's now 2,200 square foot, put that in. Right? But again, we're going to blame the seller. And we're going to confirm the facts. Right. Now we're going to find comps. Now, what I do typically is I go to draw a shape and I draw a radius and I put the little box there and I go out a 1/2 mile. Right? Roughly. It doesn't have to be perfect. Now, investors that are doing flips generally only want to go out a 1/4 mile. Location, location, location. Right, and the further out you go, the neighborhood is different. Now we can search in this area and notice the default is the last 3 months. Let's just see. And we don't get a lot. So we scroll down, we have these two, they're both 3-1s, not perfect. Right? One's a little smaller, one's a little bigger, and dollars per square foot, however, are about the same. So maybe if I don't have enough comps to make me happy, I might say, okay, how about the last 6 months? We got a couple more. And we scroll down, this is a 2-1. The little stars, of course, say it was used in the RVM. That one is a 3-2, right? But notice it's smaller. Square footage, dollars per square foot is not linear. As the size of the property goes up, dollars per square foot goes down. And that's because some of the components of the house are fixed. In other words, if the house is twice as big, the kitchen isn't twice as big, the heater isn't twice as big. Some of the components are not, it's not linear. They don't double also. Particularly if it's 2 floors, the second floor does not cost as much as the floor that's on the foundation. So we're looking, what we would really like, thanks, Louis, for some 3-2s, right? We only got one, but there's a 3-1 and there's another 3-1. And notice it's starting to give us a range. That's a pretty tight range. I'm probably not going to do the 2-1 because it's a 2-1. And I would at least like to have 3 bedrooms. You're going to want at least 3 comps. Now, remember when we were looking at the RVM, let's say I know of a property because I saw it on the Realtors valuation model that I thought was a really close match. Notice up here, I can click on this and put in a specific address. And then it'll add it to the comps. Right? And if I'm still not getting anything, I could go back further. I was doing one with an agent where we went back 12 months. Right now, normally appraisers won't go out more than a mile or back more than 6 months. But sometimes we do this just to find out if there's other comps that are better matches. They might have been older. One of the ones I did, we found the same model in the condominium, but they sold more than 12 months ago. But it was exactly the same model. So sometimes I would go back further just to see what's there, right? Just to see if there's anything better that's going to pop up. Yeah, right? Because we can tell whether or not prices are going up or going down. So if it's 12 months old, but it's a really good comparable, we can make modifications based upon the time.
Michael, can I go ahead?
Go ahead.
This is Colleen. My question is, you said you wouldn't use the 2-1, which I understand because it wasn't the same. It didn't equate the same as far as rooms, but the price per square foot was higher on that one, which would have added, because I do the RPRs or the CMAs and stuff for the appraisers also, since now they come from out of area and don't always know the neighborhoods and things like that. What was the basis for not putting in? Was it that you had enough to compare? Because this one is 1407 a square foot, which is quite a bit higher.
Right.
I'm just interested to know your reasoning. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. The first one is that I had 3 comps that were 3 bedrooms. And the subject property is 3 bedrooms. And calculating the value of a bedroom is sometimes difficult. Very difficult, right? Because they're not all equal. The other thing is that if I were looking at it, I'm trying to eliminate outliers. So why do 3 bedrooms sell for an average like this, but this one is so much higher? Now, what I would typically do is click on, if I were really curious, I would click on the property and then notice this is one of the first things I noticed, it's got 43 pictures. That means they're proud of this house, right? Because if there were 12 pictures, you know it's a dump because they don't want to show people what it looks like. Then if I read this, beautiful Spanish style, 2-bedroom, has a wonderful floor plan, living room, dining room, have windows, natural lighting, kitchen, prep space, property, doesn't really explain. But I'll bet as we go through it, we're going to find that it must look nice inside. Right, like that looks like, well, those may not be new hardwood floors, but there's hardwood floors. This has been staged. Again, what I'm looking for is something that looks like the subject property. I would rather use comps that had the same number of bedrooms than comps that don't have the same number of bedrooms. But this one, and it may have been the location, but it wasn't very far away. But this one, the dollars per square foot is so much greater than the others that and see, that's remodel. I don't know yet what the subject property looks like inside. But the question is, does it look like this? I don't know. But I generally would, ones that are really high and ones that are really low, I would generally throw out until I've seen the property. Mita, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. So Mike, is there a way, instead of putting the area map that you did, like highlighting, within that radius, can we do a zip, in
You can
our,
do zip codes and things like that. The problem is it's location, location, location. And when you're more than a quarter of a mile away from the subject property, chances are the neighborhood has changed. Even at a half mile, it's changed more. At a mile, it's changed even more. If it's at the other end of the zip code, where it may not at all be comparable, right? You want to stay in the neighborhood. And that means a very tight radius.
makes sense, okay.
All right.
Thank you.
So anyhow, that's the only reason, because I didn't think about it too much other than it's got 3 bedrooms. Remember also I said that smaller properties have a higher dollar per square foot value than larger properties. This one is 1169 square feet. It's the smallest. Now this one isn't too far off, but it's the smallest. And usually dollars per square foot goes up as the size goes down. It just does. All right. Notice we didn't find any active listings. So update valuation and close. Sometimes this is a lot easier because there's a lot of good comps. So it's given us, well, now we can create a report. What report would depend on why I'm doing this? For example, if it's for a buyer, I oftentimes will just use the property report. And the property report, if I click on customize, it shows me all the different things. And for example, what I oftentimes do is it all depends on how much data somebody wants, but it's got all the neighborhood statistics. Now, if, my client is not into data, they may not want to see all that. So I might take away the, thing saying that RPR is wonderful. If I didn't like the estimated value or those sort of things, because it seems further off, I might click that. But otherwise, I don't do a lot with this. Right now, if it's a seller report, if this was not a property report is what I typically use for a buyer. If it was a seller's report, what I'm going to do is customize it. And the areas that I uncheck is all this selected recent market activity. Now, the reason I'm unchecking this, and this is up to you, is that what that is doing is it's taking everything that's happened in the zip code and dumping it in the report. This makes the report 60, 70 pages long. Also, it now includes everything in the zip code. And so what I've noticed sellers will do is they're looking at all these other sales and they're going, oh, wow, look at that one. It sold for $2 million. Or maybe ours is. And like, no, that one is, too far away. It's just, in the zip code. Well, then why did you include it in the report if it's not useful? So I don't have a good answer for that. So I typically don't include all that other stuff, right? So this program is designed to load up stuff, right? The recommended pricing strategy, I sometimes don't click on that. I definitely don't use the net sheet, right? I use a different net sheet. But this is really what I'm looking for, is this information up here. for a typical CMA. If you want, go ahead. If you print it, I'm talking, this is like 70 pages long when it's all done. Now, over here, you'll notice sometimes people say, well, I don't want the broker address. The broker's address is not a requirement by the Department of Real Estate. The broker website is not a requirement by the Department of Real Estate. I don't even think we have one that we put on it. The brokerage name is a requirement of the Department of Real Estate. And if you have your own logo, the broker's logo is a requirement of the Department of Real Estate. We can have custom pages. Like what? Well, let's say I have a marketing plan and I want to add it. Let's say I have other information, a PDF or something, I can add it. Now, this is designed to add it every time. I usually would do it at a different time. I wouldn't include it. I stopped attaching it to the CMA. I make the CMA the CMA. And I don't usually give them the who is RPR. They don't really care. And I don't, these things, I didn't fill anything out. But when I get down here, what I can do is I can email it or display it. Now, if it's a buyer and I'm running the property report in advance so I know what's going on, I usually will just do display now. And those of you that have watched my How to Find and Show Homes video, which I'm going to update again, I have a spreadsheet that I give to buyers about the property that we're showing, and it includes the link so they can read this. I also could just email it to them. But let's just say display now, we're going to run the report. Yeah, I know. All right, and it's running the report. Right, we're going to go do something else. Does that sound like fun? All right. So, and one other thing about reports. Why not? Well, download report. So even though I click download, what it's done is, and notice I took out addresses and it says eXp Realty has my DRE number. This link up here, this URL, which ends with a PDF, that's a hyperlink I could share with somebody. So I usually, if I'm working with buyers, have a spreadsheet, a Google Sheet, and it has that in one of the columns. And for each of the properties we're going to show them, there's a hyperlink that they could click on and go look at it. If it's a seller, I usually do not send them the CMA in advance of the listing appointment. Let me say that again. I don't send the CMA in advance of the listing appointment. Sometimes what sellers do is they talk to 4 or 5 agents and collect their CMAs, and then they get their buddy to list the property who, doesn't know what's going on because they've looked at everyone. I don't give them the research unless I go there. Just saying, it's my, my thought. Now,
Michael, something you might let people that haven't done this before is there was an option to click page number on the previous page. And the thing is, or you don't have to do that. You can go in, even though you've done it as a PDF, you can go in, and for people like it's 70 pages and maybe you only want to take 20 or 30 with you, you can go in and print. And then as you see the page that you want, you can just put that page number and a comma. And that way you can make a sub-report of the report if someone wants to do that.
yeah.
A lot of people don't know that, Michael.
So where are you talking about putting in the page number? Under the customize? I just unclick things I don't want, click the things I do want, and make a copy of that. All right, I don't know of another place to modify pages. Let's say, and evaluate, let's say I'm doing an open house on this property, right? Which is not a good one because it's not on the MLS, so there isn't a lot of good pictures and things like that. I would pick property flyer. And I'm going to go ahead and run it. If I'm doing a open house, I know I need a headline. So property flyer, that's the headline is I heard that there was a lot of termites in the house. So my headline will be hurry. Won't last. Going fast, because there's termites. It's a joke. Gee. And the description, because I know there's lots of termites.
Michael, there's your page numbers under general on the right, where it says manage custom pages. It's right there.
Yeah, that's showing the page numbers.
Exactly.
Yeah, all right. So, my termite infested house, hurry won't last, going fast, surrounded by abundant wildlife. And I go down here to run report. And what it's going to do is it's going to run, this is something, if you're in a hurry and you want to make a open house flyer, and you're in a hurry. There it is, one page open house flyer that you could use, and you could type in open house, whatever. Of course, at EXP, you have the ability to do it through the KV core system and through the marketing center. But anyhow, just that's one of the more useful ones. You can run, what is a evaluation workbook is a more complicated CMA, more like what an appraiser would do. Market activity report is all the graphs and charts about what's going on in the area. And it has activity summaries, graphs and charts pretty much. And then the neighborhood report, which is this one, has, if you want to customize it, other stats and things like that. So the market activity shows you all the active, pending, closed within the zip code, neighborhood, graphs and charts, and the school report shows school rankings, and it wants you to confirm these are the school rankings, and those are the different reports. All right. Any questions about this so far?
I had a question.
Okay.
I'm looking at the different reports available and the different things you can check off. Before you go for the listing appointment, should you kind of get an idea if they're elderly or if they have children and they may be interested in the schools in the area? And
Well,
things
for
like
the seller, it's not important because the seller might be elderly without children and don't care about the schools, but it doesn't mean the buyer won't.
right.
Right, and the school report is something we're more likely to give to a buyer. So
Okay.
if I were talking to a buyer, in my buyer presentation, I would point out that I'm going to give them a market analysis before we go look at properties, including a report on the schools.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, before we go. I do it every time before I show property.
Michael, I have a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned not to send the CMA before you get the listing appointment, but how does that dialogue go? Because if like I've already committed to sending a CMA,
Well,
so like how
can't
do I
help
back
you.
out of that?
So I would
Because then
just
I didn't
say-
get the listing, in the end.
Right, well, first of all, I would say that I can't do an accurate CMA without seeing your property.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do
Okay.
it. An appraiser would
Mhm.
do it. I won't do it. It's not a professional market analysis.
Okay.
And if you want to
see
know
what
what it's worth, go to Zillow.
Okay.
Go to Redfin, go, look, if you want that, but if you want something that's accurate, I have to see the property.
Okay. Thank you.
Don't just send CMAs to people.
Thank
that
you so
don't
much.
have a working relationship with. All
Thank
right.
you.
So is this the one we were, yeah, okay. So let's talk that we did CMA refined value. All right, so again, we're given a chance to say it's got more bedrooms and bathrooms in square foot. And notice it's going to modify the valuation model because we've told it that it's bigger. What about if they've done improvements? So they've said, well, I remodeled the bathroom, I've remodeled the kitchens, I've done stuff. How does that affect? Well, we could put them in. If you know when it was done and you know how much it cost, it's going to estimate a value change based on that. Now, where does it get that information? It comes from Hanley Wood, which is a remodeling company. And there's a document, if you Google search, called the Cost versus Value Report, you can see they put this out for every region. Is this a useful thing? It all depends on what your comps look like. So if your comps are all remodeled, then we're not adding something because ours is remodeled too, right? But if the comps aren't remodeled, then this would become important. And we also have sliders. Did I see a comment? I don't know. Oh, wow. Well, no, thank you. Some key takeaways. Nothing. So refining the value. So let's say from my comps, the market has gotten hotter. And my home exterior is better. Notice this is not 100% accurate. My interior isn't as good. My lot size is a lot smaller, but I've got a great view and I've got a nice private backyard. Now notice what it's doing down here is that it is subjectively assigning a dollar value to those changes. I don't really use this a lot because what I'm more interested in is finding comps that match the subject property that we don't have to make changes to. Just saying. If we click on CMA and we look at the comps and we, where am I doing this? We look at the comps. Is that what I wanted to do? Probably not. Well, I did the refining value. I think that's enough for that. Let me just close this out. Come on. What else do I want to cover today about this? Neighborhood, my updates. The neighborhood is just like the neighborhood report. It's got graphs and let's talk about this. Information about the neighborhood. See all these little nice, whatever. So let's say this is in South Pasadena. All right. Let's say I'm working the South Pasadena market. I go up to research and I go to residential market trends. And I'm going to put in South Pasadena. And what this is telling me is that, and by the way, you can print this out. Notice there's a little print button here, but this is the kind of information I'd be more likely to take with me. Some of it is incorporated into the, to the report, the seller's report, but it says that this is the seller's market. It's got 2.32 months of inventory. People are getting almost 6% over list price. It takes 10 days to sell, and the median price is close to $2 million. Not too bad. Now, if I said, well, I'm only interested in single family homes, I could change it. But let's say I wanted to, I don't know, post this on LinkedIn. Not YouTube yet, but let's say social media. So I'm going to click on generate script, and this is a artificial intelligence script writing program. And I could say, well, I like conversational style. That's me. And I'm interested in buyers or sellers. And I'm willing to make a video. This requires more work, right? You're going to have to learn to make videos. I know some of you already know how to do that, but this will prepare a sample script that you could use, right? And it's even got suggestions, but that's a lot of work. I don't want to do a lot of work. How about, I just want to post it on social media and not do any work at all. How about that? That seems like a good idea. So I'm going to click on social media, the social campaign, and it's going to write me a social media post with all the cute little, emojis and things like that, which I could email to somebody if I wanted to, but usually I'm just going to copy the text. All right. Now, if I don't understand, because I don't know, I just don't understand what this is talking about, and I click on Analyze Metrics, the program is going to explain to me what these metrics are all about. Oh, that's nice, right? And sometimes I've used this, by the way, as a script. But all right, so I've copied the social media campaign. Now what? I want to share it. So I click on this. I could share it directly to Facebook. I could share it directly to LinkedIn. I could say, I want more. And what the more is I could select a file, a PNG file, a JPEG, or just copy the image and paste it someplace. And if I do that, what it's going to do is it's going to download the image. And so there it is. And if I wanted to post it on social media, LinkedIn is probably, they're going to probably want me to log in. I go here. Let's see, come on, LinkedIn. And by the way, on LinkedIn, you ought to follow RPR. You ought to follow, right? You can follow me. I post stuff on LinkedIn. Notice there's the image, the market trends. I'm going to paste this in. Look at all that beautiful social media stuff, and I hit post. I'm not going to do it because I'm not that focused on the South Pasadena market, but you get the idea, right? I'm going to just discard this. So you get the idea, right? And this gives you lots of different things that you could post. Don't overdo this. Don't 8 times a day for every little city and zip code post, you know, something like this. You'll just annoy people, right? They're not that interested. And notice you can, on each of these estimated values, notice for each of these, there's a share button, right? They don't have necessarily a script for each of them, but if for some reason, you see what the reason I worry about explaining this to agents is that I'm afraid that, you know, at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're going to post this one, and 9 o'clock that one, and 10 o'clock that one, and 11 o'clock that one, and you get the idea. And then tomorrow you'll pick another city and do the same thing, and then the next day, and then pretty soon no one will be following you, right? Because they're tired of just seeing this stuff. But you ought to be able to, you ought to know, our days, what are the days on market? Is there a lot of inventory? Is inventory increasing or is it going down? Notice in this particular one, months of inventory is gone up 24.06% from the previous month. That means that the amount of inventory is growing. Would that be an important thing for you to share with somebody? Inventory is going up, right? I'm just saying, right? And there's a lot of information here that's very easy for you to get your hands on, right? This graph shows how South Pasadena is doing. Looks like my EKG. Anyhow, compared to the others. Aisha, question?
Yes, how are these different than the infographics that you taught us to do?
Well, the ones from the California Association of Realtors.
Yes.
The California Association of Realtors doesn't come out till like the 17th of the month.
Okay.
And you have to wait in order to get the new ones. And they only give you a really limited, you know, choice of what you could post, whereas this has more and it's easy for you to get to.
Okay, thank you.
But generally speaking, they're all kind of the same. See, and I've used this when when I have old comps, they were 2 years old, and I might say, well, look at, you can see what's happened to the market in the last couple of years. It doesn't look like it's gone up a lot. All right. And CAR does it by county. CAR also does it by city. Can we use the script to analyze metrics for an email? You can use the script for anything. Steal it. I mean, borrow it. R&D, right? Which means rip off and duplicate. You're paying for this. Like these metrics, I actually sometimes like the analyze metrics because it's, you know, doesn't have all the emojis and things like that, but it's a nice explanation as to what's going on in the market. Some of this data is not necessarily yesterday's data, because it takes RPR time to syndicate it. But and the MLS updates every 5 minutes, but then it's more of a hassle, doesn't have as many options. And for those of you, how many of you are familiar with Canva? Anybody? Anybody know what Canva is?
Yes.
Some people said yes. So if I scroll all the way to the bottom, notice there's a thing that says blog way down here at the bottom. I click on that. And now that I'm here, if I hover over learning, I don't know why they put it here, but I hover over learning, there are Canva templates. And and there's a video right here explaining how you can use the RPR information and make Canva templates. And a lot of these templates will work with the free Canva. Some of them have extra, you know, things. Some of them, the one with that image that we were looking at, requires very little effort. These require copying and pasting and moving things around. But you'll also notice in the learning, this is what I pasted in before, that there is a bunch of tutorials, there's webinars. Learn how to use RPR. Are we happy today?
Yes, this is excellent. And they've added so much to RPR in the last couple of years.
Yeah, the Canva is a cool thing. It makes nice little market updates that you can post, don't overdo it. And they have lots of good tutorials.
Thank you so much.
All right, well, that's all I got for today. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Michael.
have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.